Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy. Hey guys, I am Judy Cho, and for those of you that don't know me, I am a nutritional therapy practitioner. I have a private practice and I help clients get to root cause healing. Okay, so this week I have with me Austin Cavelli. She is a physician's assistant, and we are going to talk about how she has healed with carnivore and how she now serves her clients and patients with a carnivore-based diet. Hey guys, it's Judy from Nutrition with Judy, and today I'm very excited. I want to introduce you, if you don't already know her, but Austin Cavelli. She is a physician's assistant, and she can introduce herself. So, Austin, thank you for coming on my channel. If you can introduce yourself, just share a little bit about your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Judy. It's a pleasure to be on here and be able to speak with you. My name is Austin Cavelli. I am a trained physician assistant. I worked originally from New York, and I worked in the hospital system for about 6 years, particularly with inflammatory conditions, mainly orthopedics and rheumatology, as well as some autoimmune conditions. And unfortunately, kind of saw the shortcomings of Western medicine and the hospital system. People were getting surgery and then being given ice cream and soda, and it just didn't really resonate. So I have always gravitated in my own health toward eating whole foods and having a clean diet, and really focusing on what we put into our body and what we do with our body as far as lifestyle, movement, sleep, stress. And fortunately, my two worlds have kind of collided, and now I'm helping people see that side of nutrition and the importance of it as well, as a dietary consultant.
So let's talk a little bit about more of your journey. How long have you been eating meat-based, and what have you healed on a carnivore diet?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was younger, I've always had kind of digestive issues, chronic constipation. They thought at one point I had SIBO. And so I was slowly kind of eliminating things, where I started with more whole foods, paleo. My brother had moved to Portland, Oregon, where paleo was very popular initially. So we kind of did it together. And then I transitioned to a more keto approach, realizing I had improved energy levels and less cravings, because I was that classic carb addict. If I had sweets, I wanted more and more and more. So as I got rid of those, not only did digestion improve, but also just kind of the mental struggles around food. And with that, I lost some weight. That was never the goal. But I was healing. My stomach, my gut was healing. And I noticed more and more improvements, and then eventually went keto to carnivore to kind of take it one step further, just with kind of the overlap of recipes and just eating more meat. I stumbled upon carnivore. So I've now been carnivore for almost 3 years. And like I said, I've seen the side of, yes, I lost some weight and I healed my gut. And at this point, it's just more so kind of maintenance and building on that, doing tweaks. I've always been a science nerd, so experimenting is definitely something I enjoy.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Let's kind of talk about the elephant in the room. So, there are some people that do know you, follow you on Instagram. You have a lot of good content, and you talk about not only why, certain organ meats or the quality of the meat is so important, but you also talk about just the nutritional benefits, right? So it's
Yeah.
good content. But I've seen some comments here and there where people will say, oh, she's really thin, right? So maybe she's
Absolutely.
like too thin, right? So I'm going to give you the floor of,
Yeah.
I know you've healed and you've told me, behind kind of recording doors, but that you've actually healed a lot. So if you kind of want to just share, what.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I'm definitely, at a lower weight than what I want to be. But like I said, I've seen the side where I went from keto to carnivore. I lost a little bit of weight. It improved my health. And it actually, I sustained a pretty significant trauma in my life, at which point I lost a significant amount of weight. I was down to 69 pounds. And fortunately, I was actually eating carnivore. It wasn't a result of carnivore. Carnivore actually sustained me. Like I said, I was in the hospital system. And so I was working in an operating room and having to stand on my feet for 12 hours a day in the OR. And it definitely wouldn't have been possible if I was not eating a carnivore diet in the sense of energy levels and maintaining, nutrients in my body. So while some people are judging and saying that I am thin, again, I was at 69 pounds and I've gained weight, and now I'm in a building phase. So I have healed from that trauma. Carnivore has helped me in more ways than one, mentally, physically, and I'm utilizing it even now. I believe everyone's has a long-term health journey. I'm using that now to build muscle and to continue to gain weight. So carnivore, I've seen both sides of the spectrum as far as, I lost some weight and now here I am utilizing it to gain weight, maintaining my lean muscle mass. So I think it's, we do have to be kind. We have to kind of take a step back and realize that you don't know someone's entire story. Yeah. So I do think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it is really important. There are people that reach out to me that are really, really thin. And so they ask, like, how do they gain weight on carnivore? Mm-hmm. Is it even a way to gain weight? So for you, what are some ways that, that you've worked with as a consultant? What are some ways that people can actually gain a little bit of weight on carnivore?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's really important to make sure that you're getting enough protein to maintain lean mass. So that's something I definitely personally focus on, and then making sure also that you're getting enough fat so that you are in a caloric surplus. Mm-hmm. So those, are very easy. And for some people, if that is still not working, introducing select carbs, where you are going to more carnivore-ish, and choosing plants that are, least toxic and not upsetting their digestive system with regard to symptoms, that would be another way to do that as well. But it's totally possible.
Let's talk a little bit about your practice and the people you see. What are some of the common kind of carnivore pitfalls, areas of support that you have to kind of help your clients?
Yeah, so one of the biggest, which I didn't anticipate, was really mindset. Many people just based, I think, social media definitely has an influence, but many people come in and they're, I'm ready to go. It's this all or nothing mentality. It's very dogmatic, or, this person said this or this person said that, and so I don't want to do that, or that's not allowed. So I think setting, finding out, of course, the details of a patient's medical history is important. Everyone's coming from a different standpoint. They all have different goals, but mindset across the board has to first and foremost be looked at, and kind of setting that stage, because you can go all or nothing, and you can, reduce inflammation. You can be strict carnivore for however much time, that you set out. But ultimately, if you're going back to old ways, or you're, falling off the wagon, so to speak, or you're not in the right mindset in terms of long-term goals and sustainability, I think it's kind of a all or nothing is not going to be the right approach. So I think that's really important. And I find that it is a struggle, or it's not even so much a struggle, but something that clients don't realize going into it. So it's a discussion I really like to have with each client.
I think that's really good, actually. I was talking to someone that's a coach for Carnivore 75 Hard Inch. So she fell in love with carnivore and ended up becoming a coach. And she said that majority of her clients, knowingly or not, had some type of disordered eating. And so majority of her clients the discussions became more about, oh, well, why are you trying to lose weight? Or why are you trying to eat these macros or something? And so it always, like you said, went back to this, you need to figure out what works for you, not like what I'm telling you you can eat and what you can't
Right.
and all these things, or the best ways to lose weight, or
Right.
yeah. And it was pretty wild. And I see that to some extent. I think for my clients, they're a little bit more ill, and so sometimes they don't have the luxury to kind of just focus on, I guess, the weight management, although
Yeah.
obviously everyone wants to kind of. Is there any
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I definitely see that as far as clients who come in for weight loss, that
Mhm.
is a struggle. That they're focusing on the weight loss and the numbers, and then they're saying, even with adjunctive therapies like intermittent fasting, they're telling you, well, tell me what to do, or how many hours, or this and that, and it's like it's not that simple, because it can play, depending on who you are, depending on whether you're incorporating things like coffee and how are you sleeping. Cortisol levels may be very, very high, and then we aren't getting to the goal of the weight loss. So I think it does have to be kind of this totality approach. And also, yeah, looking at the individual themselves. Bioindividuality is definitely my mantra, just in the sense of helping people. It is so important.
Besides mindset, what are some of the kind of, do you work with people that are new to carnivore, deep into
Yeah.
carnivore? So what are some of the other kind of conditions or or struggles that you see people have?
Yeah, so I do work with clients, and again, it is a pretty big spectrum. So people who are looking to just lose weight, versus others who have been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition or cancer, looking to get into a ketogenic state and heal their body, versus others who are I have a good number of clients that are younger, 30s, 40s, and they just want to prevent chronic disease, as using it as an anti-inflammatory approach, whether they're more carnivore-ish or keto. So I see clients like that as well. Depending on where they're coming from, like I said, the more sick patients, it's a matter of healing. They're struggling with the fact that it is, this is more of an elimination approach, and we need to utilize this to really get down inflammation and heal their body. So for them, it's like, wow, this seems really restrictive. This is too much. I'm already dealing with this. Some days I don't feel like eating meat. So I see, again, that it depends on the person, but for other people where it's the weight loss, things can't happen soon enough. So they struggle with why haven't I lost a pound, or what am I doing wrong? And it's, again, I think bringing light to the fact that the body has to heal first, even in either case scenario, whether you're trying to lose weight or not. Inside, you have to heal. So patience and timing for sure is a number one struggle in a client, across the board. As far as why people turn to carnivore, coming from more keto, it is more digestive issues that I see common struggles. And in the beginning, people who are just starting carnivore, especially, they'll complain about diarrhea or constipation, and not really constipation, but more just decreased frequency. They're not having any pain or anything, but it's their body adapting.
So how do you have people, like what are one of the mindset supports that you recommend for your clients that are like, oh, that, eating meat-based seems so restrictive, even if I have to do it for just a temporary period. What are some of the kind of tools or, I guess inspiration that you give to have them try it?
Yeah. So I actually, on that, I don't like to, force it into this all or nothing, even though, yes, they may decrease inflammation a little bit more quickly if they completely cut those things out immediately. That's very easy to say. So I like to meet them where they're at. And I've done this even in my own family. My dad and my sister both struggle with Hashimoto's. They were standard American diet. And for them, going carnivore, no chance. It took about 6 years to convince them to go more keto and low carb. So just for frame of mind. But So I think for them, it was okay. Well, yes, I understand we need to cut out, first and foremost, it was seed oils, vegetable oils. So we have to cut out that. And then we also have to cut out the sugar. It was finding transitional foods for them that were most beneficial and allowed them not only to stay on track, but now they're maintaining that. And they find that they don't really need those foods anymore. But they were, they satisfied the craving of, oh, I miss chips, or I miss taco shells. So, it was finding those brands like Siete, and these are grain free, there's no sugar, finding those clean, quality products to get them through that hump. Fat bombs. I did fat bombs for months on end. I mean, it's again, kind of having that transition period. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even in my personal journey, I had to use fat bombs for a while and to transition. So it makes a lot of sense. So as a physician's assistant, I bet you know how to read markers, right? So blood work and stuff. So tell me a little bit about, with your clients, like how you may kind of support them with, reading some of their blood work, like how it might differ on a, so somebody that's on a standard American diet, I'm guessing their bun or their T3 markers or their cholesterol will look a little different, right, than a person that's on a carnivore or keto meat-based diet. So if you can talk a little bit about certain nuances and how you basically support your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after some time, and I do like to get lab work. I think any earlier than even 6 weeks is really, it's just not necessary, unless, of course, they haven't had blood work in a long, long time. So baseline levels. But really, I don't like to get repeats until about 3 months of really being on the diet or making any significant dietary changes. In the sense of, first and foremost, what people worry about on carnivore is, how am I going to poop? And then also their cholesterol levels. So cholesterol is obviously a big one that I get on everyone, and it will differ on a carnivore diet, especially coming from the standard American diet. But if they've been low carb keto, that's also something to consider, just as far as comparison of prior levels and then levels on carnivore. I really do see improvements across the board, increases in HDL, or improvements in HDL, so increases in the amount. LDL also increases, and this is what everybody is concerned about, especially, primary care doctors who are not well versed in low carb. So they'll say, oh my God, your LDL is above 200, you need to be on a statin. We actually like to see that your LDL has increased, because that is now the vehicle, for transporting the fat to your body for utilization, for energy. And so I like to see that level go up. We also like to see triglyceride levels go down, and then having that HDL triglyceride ratio, or even total to HDL ratio, we like to see that improve, which generally on low carb it does. And in the setting of a carnivore diet, being essentially zero carb, it does. So as far as cholesterol, that's what we see most commonly. BUN and creatinine, they can elevate, and this is because of the amounts of protein that a carnivore is consuming. Even with a ketogenic diet, we will see a rise in that, and sometimes this can be related just to dehydration. But a lot of times, especially in carnivore, it's the fact that their kidneys are adapting, getting used to those, working a little bit harder to clear those amounts of protein.
Let me stop you for a second.
Yeah, of course.
No, I was going to say, so one thing about the cholesterol I'm going to ask you, but it's funny that you bring up the dehydration, because I actually see that too. And if you think about it, when we eat plants, even if we're not drinking a ton of water, plants are very, very high in the water content, especially if you eat fruits and like watermelon, but meat is not very high in hydration. There's not a ton of water in it. So we need to drink more water, but I don't think, we sort of get in this ketosis kind of state of mind. And so we don't even drink a lot of water. And so I have to remind my clients, especially if they're drinking coffee, they even need more water.
Absolutely.
So it's a great point.
I've noticed that in myself. I mean, 1 cup of water, and I'm like, I say to myself, I'll at least have a cup of coffee if I had decaf, I would still say at least have 1 cup of water to replace that. But even then it's like, no, 2 or 3 really.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely.
Okay, no, and so cholesterol. So, there are some people that are like, okay, my LDL has gone up to 300. I'm not as worried. I've seen the graphics with the Framingham studies and so on and so forth. But what if like there are people that are having LDLs in the 800, 600? Are you still
Yeah.
not as concerned? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I think what is also important to remember is that lab work is a snapshot in time. And so we really do have to get serial levels over time. Like I said, 6 weeks at the very earliest, then 3 months, and repeating those levels. I think having more data is definitely useful. And you want to see the trend. Having just one snapshot does not tell you anything. You could have someone who their level was, higher and actually went down, which again, that would mean something different in context of their diet and their changes that they made versus it going up. So you always need to know, have a reference point. Serial labs over time are more useful. And also looking at that, yes, we do expect that LDL will go up, but to what degree, and are there other things to consider? Do you have a familial history of cholesterol? Are you dealing with thyroid issues, which can be coexisting?
Oh, yeah.
With cholesterol disorders, hypothyroidism, they can be coexisting. Another thing is just chronic stress levels, so as far as looking at like inflammatory markers, cortisol levels, again, you have to kind of look at the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
So just taking an LDL level even of itself is not telling me much.
Makes a lot of sense. What about some of the other markers you're talking about? Maybe, what about like your T3? So T3 oftentimes goes low. What's your kind of take on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so I'll often see that it does go low, but then the other values and antibodies are normal. Everything else is completely fine. So it's in isolation, and it's usually at the start of their approach within the first 6 weeks to 3 months. But generally, it returns back to baseline. I don't, or at least I don't see any further changes in their TSH telling me that their thyroid needs help, is being stimulated. So I'm not sure exactly what to make of it, that it goes down initially, but it usually normalizes. So I don't tend to worry about it, especially if they're not having any symptoms. If they're cold, they have dry skin, dry hair, brittle nails, more those signs of low thyroid, then I would dive a little deeper. But generally asymptomatic and no changes in the thyroid stimulating hormone or the other levels, I'm not too worried.
Okay, fair enough. What about clients that have been carnivore? And maybe you don't have clients like this, but what about clients that have been carnivore for many months and now they're not really still sleeping through the night? What would be your general kind of recommendation?
Yeah, so I do see that, sometimes particularly getting up, like waking up in the middle of the night,
Mhm.
initially, depending on where they're at. So if they've been on the diet, we'll approach it from, if they've been on the diet for a long time and all of a sudden that's happening, of course, I'm going to ask them if there's been any changes in their diet. Electrolytes is always one. Some people will say, oh, I woke up and it was because my heart was beating quickly. So you're wondering, blood pressure low, electrolyte related, more of a fluid balance issue. Are they supplementing with electrolytes? Sometimes, particularly in women, and I have a couple that are menopausal, it is low levels of progesterone that can wake you up. So I have dealt with that as well, and they've working with someone doing hormone replacement therapy. So we kind of play on with that. Looking at fat levels, I think, is important, because hormones, whether it is progesterone or another one is cholesterol or cortisol, excuse me, as well. Cortisol levels, as far as waking them up, especially that kind of dawn phenomenon, they wake up early and then they can't get back to sleep. That's also a consideration. Are they what time are they eating? Also, how much protein are they eating at their last meal, as far as having kind of a dip in glucose levels and that waking them up. That's another consideration. So I know that's a loaded answer. It really depends on the client, but I like to weed through a couple of those things and try and pinpoint it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I use similar kind of levers to figure out too. So I think it's
Yeah, what do
oftentimes
you see in
so
yours?
similar things. One is sometimes they eat too much protein. So that was one. So always I kind of focus on increasing the fats, and then that normally helps a lot. So oftentimes I'll see people follow the 2 pounds mantra, which most uh, generally women don't need to eat that much meat. And so when
Yeah.
they eat that much meat, then they may have kind of like you're saying the dawn effect. And then if they were pre-diabetic or diabetic before, there's even a higher chance if they are having bad menopause that can, or lots of hot flashes types of menopause, then yes, that can even be a bigger sign of them eating too much protein for their needs. And
Yeah.
so if you increase the fat, like you said, with the cholesterol and the cortisol, so that will also help. But let's say it's not that, then it's again similar things as you. So then I'll be like, when are you eating your meals, right? Are you eating it
Right.
close to your dinner? And some
Yeah.
people, they actually do better. So I used to say no meals close to dinner time, no 4 to 5 hours. And in my book, I talk about how you can but basically have better sleep that way. But just clinically, I've seen that there are people that actually do better with a snack right before bed, right? So they have
Yeah.
like 2 ounces of meat and then like 3 tablespoons of butter or whatever fat they can tolerate, and then
Mhm.
they sleep better. So I think
Yeah.
it really, like you're saying, and you are so good about it, is it's very bio individual. You have to meet the person where they are, but there's several reasons why it can happen. It could be just
Absolutely.
that you have poor digestion, electrolytes, all of that. So I kind of go through everything you're saying. It was really good. Just
Yeah, no, and even I've noticed not only too much protein, but yeah, like you said, kind of having a bolus, like all at one meal. I noticed it myself. I was testing kind of my upper limits of protein, and it wasn't that I was waking up because I couldn't sleep or, my mind was racing. It was the fact that I was drinking a lot more with the increased protein, and I was having to get up, and it was my kidneys trying to process it all. And I was peeing a lot more with higher amounts of protein at that later meal. So switching that even to the earlier part of the day and having a little bit of a lighter meal, or like you said, some people need a little snack. Otherwise, they're thinking of food the entire night and they're waking up, hungry. And so yeah, it does. It depends on the person.
yeah, no, I totally agree. So that was very helpful. Let's move on to a different topic. So,
Sure.
you on Instagram, you share all these kind of quality carnivore pictures and you're just your genuine self. So knowing that you are all about the quality of the meat is so important and how it can affect your health, right? So are you opposed to people eating grain fed? Like, where do you stand kind of with that?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the person. Of course, I do say that get what you can afford, but I do believe also that you vote with your dollar, and if you can source, locally, even better. So again, if they're coming from a place of an autoimmune condition or cancer, I do like to say, let's get the best possible sources that we can, even if that means, having to go locally, or if there's not local, to get it delivered. Am I against grain-fed meat? No, but I think there's also some tips that you can take with getting grain-fed meat. Opting for the leaner cuts of grain-fed meat versus getting those ribeyes. To avoid, the toxins that potentially are in the fat, and then sourcing, your fat sources from more of a grass-fed, grass-finished source. So I think, again, just attention to detail is important with quality across the board. If money is an issue, get what you can afford. It shouldn't be this, it's not a dogmatic thing of, no, I cannot consume this, because I personally was carnivore for years in New York, and there is not one grass-fed, grass-finished steak in a New York steakhouse. So I was eating grain-fed for a long time, and it didn't affect me personally. But for some people who are trying to heal their body, where that attention to detail is a little bit more important, yes, I would, of course, opt for grass-fed, grass-finished. Again, it depends on the person.
I agree. I completely agree with you. I think if you can afford it, and
Yeah.
if you find a local farmer, typically they're not that much more expensive than getting like good meat from the market. So
Absolutely. It is. It's more the, when you're getting from certain delivery services or whatnot that they're charging you the big
yes.
shipping fees and this and that. So I always tell clients, go to eatwild.com, find a local source, ask the questions that you want to ask as far as, chicken, pork, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, lamb. It's just a better route to go, and you're supporting local as well.
Right. What about macros? So do you have your clients eat a certain kind of, do you kind of go towards high fat? Are you just very bio individual? There's some
Yeah.
schools of thoughts where they eat more protein and then some, they eat higher fat. So where do you kind of fall?
Yeah, so when clients are first starting out, the first 6 weeks, I don't like it to be something too obsessive. So again, it's kind of this all or nothing or tracking, or I don't want them to get into that really obsessive mindset. I very often I find the clients come and they're like, all right, we're going to do all of it. We're going to do the diet. We're going to do the workout. We're going to add it all. And you're like, oh no, like one thing at a time. So I do like to keep it a little bit more lax for those first, especially the first 6 weeks, telling them to eat until they're comfortably full, eat as often as they want initially to kind of heal their body and get those hormones and hunger cues more regulated. So 1-to-1 is kind of where I like to start people. And then after 6 weeks, I'll reevaluate and see, what are the goals? Are the goals weight loss? Are the goals continued healing and reversing an autoimmune condition? And then we can tinker or even just begin the discussion of tinkering with macros. But yeah, I don't, like I said, calorie counting, absolutely not. Macros start 1-to-1 fat to protein, and then we'll go from there depending on goals.
So what do you eat in a day, and do you follow the 1-to-1, or are you kind of more flexible?
Yeah, so like I said, I was tinkering around with higher protein, just with focusing on gaining mass and well, maintaining lean mass and then gaining muscle mass. So I personally do like a 60-40 is kind of my sweet spot in the sense of energy and how I feel. But yeah, I was going much higher protein and I was not feeling as well, kind of heavy and just digestive issues, kind of bloating. Like I said, I was getting up to pee in the middle of the night. I was drinking a lot of water, and it was to the point of just a little bit uncomfortable. So I do believe that fat is really important for clients, especially in the beginning, to get their hormones regulated. So if anything, I would err on the side of higher fat for people who are struggling at all with energy or just getting used to the diet.
How about, have you ever tried eating like 80% fat of total calories? And if you have, like, how did that make you feel compared to this
Yeah.
now?
So I, particularly when I was doing keto, I was more like that 70-75. When I went any more than 75, I did have digestive issues with fat. And so I just noticed a little bit more like gallbladder symptoms. And so, yeah, again, that's kind of, I can go up as high usually as about 70 or 75, but past that, I don't do as well, even with some of the fattier cuts of meat, depending on how they're cooked, like the brisket, when it is a kind of a bolus of fat, I do better when my fat is like throughout the day. So I've noticed things like that, but I can push about 75% and still feel good.
That's pretty good. I mean, some of my clients, even at 70, they start getting loose stool. So 75 is
Yeah.
pretty good. I mean, that's probably where I kind of fall on average. Um,
Yeah.
and I do notice if I eat a lot of fat, there will be a cap where I'll start feeling kind of like the burping or the indigestion, but
Yeah.
it's probably too much at that point.
That's what I noticed. So I space it out a little bit more as opposed to just eating like, you know, a pound of brisket at one sitting. Like that would be bad news.
How much protein or how much meat do you eat in a day typically?
Yeah, so I usually a minimum is like a pound and a half, like pound and a quarter to a pound and a half, up to 2 pounds. But 2 pounds are the days that I've like worked out. I'm much more active. But usually, yeah, I'd say on average, 1.5 pounds.
And do you eat cuts like more like the New York strip? I know you eat a lot of organ meats, right?
I do eat a lot of organ meats. So generally, I mean, speaking, I would have more organ meats on my plate than I would have muscle meat. But then I was noticing that organ meats are very lean. So I was playing around with suet versus getting my fat out off of ribeyes and those types of things. I personally like the fattier cuts of meat as far as muscle meat, and then I'll add organs in addition. But even the organ meats, liver is a staple, kidney is a staple, but I really like sweetbreads and brain, which are your fattier. They're still fairly lean, but they're your fattier options as far as organs, even tongue. Again, so I gravitate toward the fattier cuts.
One question I get often, because I saw one of your Instagram posts where you ate raw organ meat. I don't know which one it was, but I get often asked, is it risky at all to be eating raw meat and raw organs? So what is your take on that?
I think it's really just important to know where you're sourcing it from. So if you do have a good source, a small local farm, their attention to detail for those animals is top notch. So I don't personally worry about it. Everything I get is locally sourced. But when you're going to Whole Foods and you're getting beef liver from the freezer that you're not really sure how long it's been in there or where it's coming from, I do, tend to say just use caution or go out of your way for the organ meats, getting them from a source that I think that's important as far as eating them raw.
And then do you eat organ meat every day? So how much, because sometimes there's a concern for like vitamin A toxicity because liver, I don't think I don't think heart has a ton of vitamin A, but I know liver does, kidney does. So are you concerned at all based on the vitamin A kind of ranges? I think 6 to 8 ounces would be the most you can consume in a week. Are you concerned? And then do you eat much more than that?
Yeah. So I do eat organ meats every day, but I do, I don't go above probably 3 or 4 ounces in a day, and I like to change it up as far as variety. There are days where I'll have that 3 or 4 ounces versus another day, well, maybe I'll just have an ounce or two. I don't worry about vitamin A toxicity, to be honest, in me personally, but as far as clients, I will recommend, 1 to 2 ounces is plenty. 16 ounces of organ meats in a week, I think is absolutely plenty. I don't think there's benefit going beyond that point. And so to be mindful of that, because we don't have long-term studies, I think that's a good gauge.
That's good. What about supplements? So obviously you eat very, very nutrient dense. So
Yes.
do you recommend some of your clients take supplements in the beginning if they're sick or if they're having digestive issues? Like, what's your take on supplements?
Yeah, so I always like to kind of dial everything back, just with the approach of the diet as well, especially if they are sick, to get them off of as many supplements initially as possible, in order to really see how they're reacting to the diet. But for digestive issues, for sure, I'm not against HCl, pepsin, the ox bile, bile salts, as far as a supplement initially when they're transitioning. And then we'll hopefully get them off of that with adaptation. The other two that I have really don't have a problem with is magnesium. And I'll recommend magnesium glycinate. I think it's helpful not only to stimulate the bowels, which it's not as strong as as like magnesium citrate in producing a more immediate bowel movement, but it helps with bowels as far as constipation to some degree. It also helps with sleep with the glycine in it, and to help kind of that ratio as far as balancing the glycine with the methionine with eating larger amounts of meat. So magnesium glycinate is one that I'm not opposed to, particularly taking it at night, or I'll recommend even having bone broth at night, again, for reasons of glycine. The other supplement is vitamin D. which I think is very, very important. So magnesium being kind of the precursor in order to be able to uh, actually utilize vitamin D, I think is important. But then vitamin D in and of itself, of course, if you can get outside, excellent, get your 20, 30 minutes, as much as you can throughout the day, but some people can't even get that. So I'm not afraid to supplement with vitamin D either. I think it's extremely important. Um, and magnesium, the other reason is that we're not getting it a lot in our water any longer. So these trace, these minerals that our water is now stripped of, I think it's really, really important. I see so many different signs and symptoms of magnesium deficiency in clients where I'm like, oh, they're always the ones craving the dark chocolate.
Yeah, no, that definitely I see that too. I have been a fan of the magnesium sprays just because topically it just gets absorbed much quicker than you have
Yeah.
to absorb it through the digestive process. So I've seen a mix, but yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I think the point is to get some magnesium, right? So
Yeah, I think
I'm a fan.
a lot of people are low on magnesium.
Yeah. And I'm seeing that more through the hair tissue mineral test that the magnesium is lower compared to like calcium, for example. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, as we're closing, what would be kind of some tips that, people can kind of walk away from this interview with?
Yeah. So I would definitely advise that in adopting this way of eating, I think it's really important to clarify initially, especially, writing in a journal, kind of getting the mindset clear and ready as to why. What is your why? What are your goals? And keeping those in mind throughout the journey, especially initially, because it is very easy to kind of get into that trap of influencers, whether it's on social media or that dogmatic approach of yes and no foods, or this is allowed, this isn't allowed. So my biggest piece of advice is really to focus on what you are, what your goal is, what you want to get out of it personally, what benefits, writing down the benefits that you're seeing, or writing down things that aren't yet improved but you want to see improve a little bit further. That way you're just always reminded of what the long-term goal is, what your why is, because it's very easy to get trapped in, well, I'm doing it because this person is doing it and they had good results, so that's what I want, good results, versus looking at you as an individual and seeing why you set out to do this in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, the more I work with so many clients and they compare themselves to someone on social media, or because some doctor or dietitian or somebody said you should do it this way, and then they follow and it's like, but it's not working for me, right? But then they just kind of muscle through, like maybe it's the transition period. And
Yeah,
I really think that our bodies are the strongest feedback to us. And so if it's not doing well, if you're still having loose stools after months, or you're still not sleeping through the night, or your energy is crashing, like all of these are symptoms that whatever you're doing is not working. And maybe
absolutely.
it's time to not focus on, whoever said that it worked for them, because we're so
Yeah,
different. Like you and I look so different, right? So it's,
right.
and so what you eat and what I eat are not going to be the same, right? So it's just, I
Yeah.
think we really need, and I'm so glad your messaging is that way, because I think it's so, so important.
Yeah, and even to the point of, being more strict,
Mhm.
is another point, that people think that if you are more strict carnivore, versus carnivore-ish, that strict means better, means faster results, means quicker, whatever your goal may be. And that's not true. I've seen many people who strict to the T, and they suffered. So strict does not necessarily mean better, either.
Yeah, no, same here. I've seen people do like all beef, grass fed, grass
Yep.
finished, and not doing that well. So
No, no. So it really does. It's a very individual basis. And I know everybody, of course, wants the quick fix, to tell me what to do and I'll do it, but that's not how it works, unfortunately.
so where can people find you, your services? If people want to consult with you, how can they reach
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, so I offer, Q&A sessions, or people who just have some questions about, something that they want to, something specific that they want to work on, versus more formal consultations, or kind of dive deeper into their full history, And whether it's adopting a carnivore way of eating, or like I said, transitioning keto, meeting them where they're at. So more formal consultation and setting up a custom plan, whether that's 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, depending again on where they're coming from. I also offer separate services of lab recommendations or review. A lot of people will want to just go over their blood work and understand it because their primary care doctor isn't well versed in low carb and is telling them to get on a statin. So they would just want to know that everything's okay in the setting of a carnivore diet. So that's kind of the gist of it. I am on Instagram, Facebook. I have a YouTube that I will be starting in the near future for sure. I'm also on LinkedIn. So all of these, you can reach out to me. My website is qualitycarnivore.com. I have a form you can write into as well for questions. And if you want to work with me, by all means, DM or any one of those platforms, I'm available.
Okay, and I will include them in the notes, but it's your handle is Quality Carnivore, right?
Yes, at Quality Carnivore.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And again, I will put all of your contact information in the notes.
Yes.
I'm sure so many people will find this helpful with the cholesterol, with markers, and just getting back to health. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Congratulations on your new launch of Carnivore Cure. I'm so excited to dive in. And it's been an absolute pleasure, Judy. Thank you.
I will talk to you soon. Take care.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys. I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope it helps you get to root cause healing. All right, guys, you know the drill. Make sure to eat a lot of meat. Take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one and take care. Bye.